Good afternoon. I'm London Bradshaw, one of the regional directors for Allstar Brands International Division, and along with Alyssa Fluke, I will be reporting today on the progress of the first 7 years of our venture into the Asian market. We chose to enter the South Korean market in year 1 and the Japanese market in year 5. We chose the South Korean market because it is a medium-sized economy in the Asian region. It has had stable GDP growth and exchange rates in the past, as well as fewer competitors than there are in some of the other Asian markets. South Korea has a high GDP, low percentage of population below the poverty line, and a large percentage of their population in urban areas. The combination of these economic and social characteristics made South Korea an ideal market for our international expansion. As we analyzed our market research for South Korea, we determined that it was best to sell through hypermarkets and wholesale channels. We also decided to build a plant in Japan in year 2. South Korea also had some of the lowest shipping and tariff costs with Japan in the Asian market. From the beginning of the venture, we knew we eventually wanted to expand into Japan. Because of its low growth rate and highly saturated market with many local, regional, and foreign competitors, we decided to enter South Korea first and move into Japan after we had gained financial stability. In South Korea, we determined we could reach the highest percentage of the market demand by offering SKUs in the economy, white, and healthy segments. We started in year 1 with 2 SKUs in economy, 1 in white, and 1 in healthy. We offered similar allowances as our competitors and undercut the other foreign competitors on price. We sold 18.8 million units in our first year of operations. In year 2, we sold 28.2, which was an increase of 50%. From then, we averaged between 30 and 33 million units in sales as the market competition became increasingly stiff. In the economy segment, our market share at the end of year 7 was 15%. Our market share for the white and healthy segments, which are the most competitive, was around 10%. Our market share for the kids segment was almost 25%. In Japan, we decided to use a different strategy. We still sold only in the hyper and wholesale channels to reach the largest percentage of the population's shopping habits, but we sold SKUs in only one segment. We chose the kids segment, not because it had the largest demand, but because there was no other company selling in the kids segment. Even though there was less demand, we were able to capture a larger percentage of the market more quickly than in South Korea. In Japan, we sold 21.7 million units the first year of operation and 45.6 million the second year, an increase of 210%. Last year, we had the highest sales so far in Japan at 56.9 million units. In the kids segment, we were able to capture just under 50% of the market share in the first 3 years of operation.
By the end of year 7, we earned the second highest net income in the South Korean market. Only one other brand, a local competitor, had a positive annual contribution. We were able to achieve this market position by offering competitive prices and allowances relative to our competitors. We used extensive pricing data analysis to help predict the prices of our competitors each year, and in return, price our products just below the competition. We earned our first net profit in South Korea in year 4, with 729 million Korean won, or about 800,000 US dollars. Since then, our net income has increased annually, the highest being in year 6 at 4.7 billion Korean won, or 5.7 million US dollars. Utilizing our plant in Japan has allowed us to maintain one of the lowest cost of goods sold percentage of sales in the South Korean market, decreasing our cost almost 30% from the first year of production. Our gross margins have also been increasing at a very encouraging rate, averaging at about 37.1% in year 7. In Japan, we also earned the second largest net income in the market by the end of year 7, which was only our 3rd year in that market. We used the same pricing strategies as in South Korea and even priced a small amount lower than we did relative to our competitors in South Korea. This is because customers in Japan are much more sensitive to price changes. We wanted to make our product stand out by offering the lowest prices possible. Our sales revenue increased every year that we were in Japan, increasing 210% from years 5 to 6. We were profitable for the first time in Japan in year 6, only our 2nd year in that market, with a net income of 575 million Japanese yen, which is about 7.4 million US dollars. From then, our net income continued to increase annually, the highest in year 6 at 1.2 billion Japanese yen or 15.8 million US dollars. Producing in Japan allowed us to maintain one of the lowest cost of goods sold percentage of sales in the Japanese market. Our gross margins were very high in Japan as well, averaging at about 39.5% at the end of year 7. Overall, our cumulative profit for South Korea was just over 22.2 million US dollars and $40.6 million in Japan. The net profit for both countries in year 7 was 19.5 million US dollars.
In year 1, we entered South Korea with 4 SKUs, 2 in the economy segment, 1 in the white segment, and 1 in the healthy segment. We forecasted that we would sell 12 million units and exceeded that forecast to sell 18.8 million units. However, we still incurred a net loss this year, mainly due to the high cost of goods sold and tariffs. This is because our plant in Japan would not be ready to utilize until year 3. We also started collecting pricing data from our competitors to use in the future. Our prices were not very competitive in year 1 because of our lack of historical data of competitor pricing. In year 2, we started construction on a production plant in Japan to lower our cost of goods sold and shipping expenses. We also exceeded our sales forecast for the 2nd year in a row, selling 28.2 million units when we had forecasted to sell around 22 million units. In year 3, we utilized production from our plant in Japan for the 1st year. This dramatically decreased our cost of goods sold as well as our tariff cost. We increased sales for the 3rd year, but by a smaller amount than in the previous years, as competitors began to recognize the potential in the South Korean market, and we faced an influx of new competitors dramatically undercutting the prices of everyone else in the market. We produced our first net income of 729 million Korean won in year 4. By this time, we were selling around 30 million units, and we're one of only 2 companies in South Korea to have a positive net contribution. Also in year 4, we added 3 SKUs into the kids segment to help curb some of the new competition we faced in the other segments. In years 5 through 7, we continued with our pricing and selling strategies, increasing our net income in all 3 years. At the end of year 7, our net income was 2.5 billion Korean won, and we sold 33.3 million units. One of the most important factors in our strategy in years 5 through 7 was detailed analysis of competitor pricing data to predict where they would price their products in the upcoming year.
Our first year in Japan was year 5. We entered Japan with 5 SKUs in the kids segment because at that time there were currently no other brands selling in the kids segment. We used the same pricing strategies as in South Korea, and they proved to be successful once again. We incurred a net loss in year 5, but we were still able to sell 21.7 million units. In year 6, our second year in the Japanese market, We earned our first net income of 575 million Japanese yen. We also more than doubled our sales, selling 45.6 million units. Other brands in Japan took note of our success the previous year, and we faced 3 SKUs of competition in year 6. In year 7, we dramatically increased our sales once again, selling just under 57 million units. Our net income was 1.3 billion Japanese yen, which was more than double our profit in year 6 and the second highest net income in the Japanese market. We were even able to surpass the net income of very competitive international brands. They had much higher sales revenue than us, but due to our local production in Japan, we were able to earn a higher net income than them because of our low cost of goods sold, shipping, and tariff costs.
One of the biggest opportunities we faced in the Asian markets was the low shipping costs and tariffs between Japan and South Korea. Building a plant in Japan was, by far, the most influential factor in achieving a net profit in the Asian market. The majority of our competitors in both countries who continually sell more units than we do have yet to turn a net profit because of their extremely high cost of goods sold expenses. We were able to decrease this expense in South Korea by over 30% when we began producing at our production facility in Japan in year 3. Another opportunity we have been able to take advantage of so far in South Korea and Japan is very little competition in the kids segment. We originally entered the kids segment in South Korea because there was no other competitors, and chose to focus solely on this segment when we entered Japan for the same reason. The other segments have such fierce competition from local and regional brands that it can be very difficult to take away market share from any competitors, especially in a very mature market like Japan. This large established market presence from local and regional brands was one of the biggest challenges we have had so far. In some segments, local and regional brands controlled as much as 80% of the market share. The main reason for this advantage was that these companies can produce so cheaply that they can price much lower than any other brand in the market. However, we still found that if we could meet the customer's expectations on size, texture, and delivery, we could still increase our units sold each year, even though our prices weren't as low as the Asian brands. Another challenge that we faced, which was out of our control, was depreciation of the Korean won beginning in year 5. For 2 years, the won depreciated dramatically, which had a negative effect on the translation of our earnings in South Korea into US dollars. The dilemma we then faced was deciding whether or not to exit our most profitable market because we had so much foreign currency that couldn't be converted into an equal amount of US dollars. The exchange rate did stabilize in year 7, but it is still a lower exchange rate than we had hoped. Now that we are much more financially stable in Japan than when the depreciation in South Korea began, we will reevaluate our plans to remain in the South Korean market in the future.
Based on the previous analysis of Allstar's performance and the opportunities and challenges we faced in the Asian markets, we have formulated a list of objectives along with specific action plans to help continue our successful performance in the future. Our first decision is to exit the South Korean market due to exchange rate fluctuations in year 5 to 6 that dramatically decrease the translation of our Korean won earnings into US dollars. We wanted to wait until we were financially stable in Japan to make this decision. Even though we are earning one of the highest net incomes in the South Korean market, it is no longer beneficial to translate these earnings back into US dollars. We will start by completely cutting the promotion and advertising budgets in South Korea. Next, we will decrease SKU production until we have completely exited the market. This decision will also allow for future growth in Japan by freeing up production capacity in our plant. Next, we plan to enter a new market in the next 3 years. We are looking at expanding into either Japan or India. We are still in the planning stages of this decision and are conducting extensive economic and social research in both countries. We will monitor GDP growth rates, inflation rates, consumer shopping habits, exchange rates, and competitor pricing over the next 2 years, and make our decision on which market to enter in the 3rd year. The expansion decision will be very critical to our performance because China and India are the 2 largest markets in the Asian region, and many other competitors are looking to take advantages of the opportunities in each country. Because of this, we are carefully planning our entry strategies so that when we enter the market, we will have a strategy that will be the most effective in penetrating these huge markets. Finally, our last objective is to increase our market share in the Japanese kids segment. We currently have around 40% of the market share in this segment after our first 3 years of operation. However, since we are only selling SKUs in one segment in Japan, we would like to start dominating this market in the future, especially now that we are becoming increasingly more profitable in this market. We plan to do this first by increasing the number of SKUs that we sell in Japan. We are currently only selling 4 SKUs, which is a relatively low number for the Japanese market. Based on our expectations of future consumer preferences, we are planning to add an additional 2 to 4 SKUs over the next 2 years. We also will increase our allowance and sales force in the kids segment to increase the demand for our product. Increasing our allowance gives more money to our distributors who sell our products in the hypermarket channels. Since almost 90% of our sales in Japan come from the hypermarket, we will increase our sales force in this channel as well. As Allstar looks forward to the next 5 years, we are optimistic that we hold a strong position to both learn from our past challenges and take advantage of future international market opportunities. We believe that our planned objectives, along with these plans to achieve them, will provide a pathway for a successful performance in the coming years. Thank you.